Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacks Experiences. This day, we have a special guest. His name is Phil Irvine. If, if I'm corrected, Phil is a marketing executive with vast experiences from a brand and agency perspective, having responsibilities managing direct to consumer programs with an emphasis on driving audience and customer centric focus at scale. Hi, Phil. How are you?
Oh, very good. And thank you for having me here. And I appreciate the warm welcome.
Thank you, Phil. It's also a pleasure always to have a marketing specialist and expert in our segment because indeed we created Growth Hacks Experiences to share the great strategies that we can forward to other founders and executives, not only in Europe but in the US as well. Let me tell also to our audiences, like for example, Phil also has a track record managing not only marketing but also operations, customer experience activities around the e-commerce businesses. Phil, as I understand, you also lead the e-commerce and growth marketing at Mojo Professional Service Group at the moment as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, for some background, Mojo is a digital operating partner for brands of all sizes. And historically, Mojo has had strengths in creative, in terms of creative production, but also the development of assets for marketing and media. Mojo has great strengths in general marketing strategy, MarTech strategy, and then I joined recently, only about 3 months ago, to really accelerate and stand up an e-commerce and growth marketing practice. So, we're talking with a lot of brands about all sorts of engagements, from owning all of media, performance marketing, to customer strategy and analytics, like you mentioned, and then just general e-commerce operations for the end goal of growth and profitability for brands. So yeah, excited to be here, and yeah, excited to expand more into this topic.
Wonderful, wonderful. Indeed, for our audience, consider this. Consider how much the retail industry has changed over the last decade. And consider how the e-commerce was boosted or created the biggest growth through COVID and in the years after. So now today we have Phil as an expert to tell us a little more about how the retail industry should consider growth strategies in the coming months, in the coming years, and what kind of is not only strategies but also what kind of pinpoints we should consider now that we have even new technologies coming like AI. Phil, could you tell us a little bit first about what is your consideration, what is your opinion about what's going on in the retail industry at the moment?
Yeah, and you teed this up very, very nicely. With COVID, and obviously with COVID, with the lockdowns that we had, the inability of brands to connect with retailers in physical brick and mortar shops, retailers had to pivot. They couldn't just stop selling product to customers. So the natural alternative or progression was to get into e-commerce. And what's happened is I'd say a lot of brands made the pivot. Only very few are doing it very well. I think it's pretty easy. I shouldn't say easy, but there's a lot of tools and playbooks in place to stand up an e-commerce store, get a website, get a presence, get basic marketing in place, triggered emails, lifecycle marketing, etc. But I think where there still are some gaps is presenting a cohesive experience between in-store experiences and the online experience. And at a basic level, it's having the same branding either within your shop, your logo outside your store, the marketing materials that you have within your shelves and whatnot, and then translating that into your website, using the same fonts, color schemes, messaging tone on your website and with all your marketing communications. And I think with COVID and brands having to pivot to have this dual pronged approach to distribute products and sales to their customer, there's been a bigger need to make these connections, because the big thing is consumers, number one, consumers have a lot more options for all types of products than they used to. It's easier for discovery. It's easier to simply do Google searches or Bing searches to find out information and research different brands. So the ones that can stand out are the ones that can make the connection between retail as well as online and having cohesive experiences. And I'm sure we'll get into a lot more with this, but having that seamless experience throughout is what's helping some brands stand out and accelerate versus others right now.
Indeed. Well, exactly that was happening to me today. While I was walking back home today, we're in Amsterdam here, so we're connecting today from Amsterdam, and we're connecting with Phil in California, right? For everyone. So it's interesting to see actually also the perspective of two different continents here. Now today, imagine Phil, walking home, I saw one of my old favorite stores being closed. It was a sport clothes. They used to sell all kinds of sportswear for especially soccer, and they closed after probably more than a decade being there. And exactly what you were mentioning, I believe actually, even though they had all the great brands, Nike, Adidas, everything, they just failed to bring that vision, to translate that kind of business to online. I never saw them online. I never understood actually if they had a web shop in place. And now they're gone.
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple things with that, because that's happening. Dick's Sporting Goods, to tie into your example, they're a recent store that's had to close a lot of their physical locations. A really one that's big in the news right now is Bed Bath and Beyond. They had to shut all of their stores and physical locations, and they recently merged with Overstock, which was a digitally native company that sold furniture, home goods, and Overstock kind of took over Bed Bath and Beyond, and they're trying to kind of rebrand themselves as a joint company. But when you think about retail, it's tough. I mean, it's not easy to do retail. You have expensive rent costs. You have to pay employees and store associates. You have carrying costs to keep inventory within the store. And then you have all of the actual expenses to operate the locations, electricity, gas, lights, water, et cetera. So when you think about all that, you really have to drive a very consistent high volume of sales for a retail store to be profitable. And then when you get into e-commerce, I mean, you do have some costs with running a direct-to-consumer business, but typically your margins are a lot higher. So you have better unit economics and you're more profitable. So that's why, a lot of brands now, as opposed to maybe 50, 60 years ago, obviously when the internet wasn't at where it is right now, where they started out with physical stores, now a lot of newer brands, they're starting out as being digitally native first, and then slowly getting into retail when they feel like they have enough of a brand presence where they can create that demand to their physical stores to be able to justify all those costs with operating a physical store location. So it's, I don't know how much you want to get into the financials with all of this, but that's why this is happening. But that's also why you're starting to see, a lot of brands, as opposed to opening their own physical retail store, they're, a lot of times we talk about differentiating wholesale versus retail, and wholesale is, distributing your product through big conglomerates like Macy's or Nordstrom's, if you're in clothing, or pop-up shops is a big thing, at least here in the States, is for a short duration of time, getting a presence at like a farmer's market event or a conference or some type of grassroots events, and having physical presences on that front. And it's seen more, obviously it's done to drive sales, but it's also seen as a way to enhance your brand so that people can make better connections with your brand and have more recognition on the downstreams. So, yeah.
when do you see that started with the retail industry? Do you think that Apple had something to do with it, with Apple stores?
With the as far as closing, or as far as standing up the online
It's
presence.
exactly like changing the way how we perceive even retail industry stores now. I mean, when I see the ones that are, let's say, even in the sector, in the shops that we are around here. I live in the center of the city, and it's always interesting to see also uh, what kind of experiences they are delivering. And there is this, for example, these other interesting sports shops where that now I'm visiting, and they deliver you this kind of in-house workshops and in-house treatments where they use even pictures and videos to see what how your body is reacting to the
Yep.
products that they are selling. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting.
I think yeah, Apple is definitely one of the leaders in that realm. Uh I think another I'll bring up two more interesting examples that have been called out a lot, but Starbucks, it's interesting because you think of coffee as a commodity, but Starbucks, it's been well documented that they started to rearrange the layout of their physical locations to aid with digital experiences. So now when you think about the experience of buying coffees, Starbucks has one of the best loyalty apps. And I don't know the exact figures, but they have a large percentage of people that order ahead with their app. And they made a pivot with where people actually picked up their coffees. So now when you go to a lot of Starbucks, they'll have the pickup area close by the entrance of when you enter the store. And then what they also do is they separate pickups of mobile orders from the actual placement of orders in stores. So they were definitely thinking about the digital consumer and then creating a better in-store experience once they got to the store. But
Wow.
the other thing, yeah, the other example that's probably a little sexier for your audience here that I wanted to bring up is the usage now of virtual reality, um, which is crossing over into digital and physical. But with a lot of clothing brands, and Aloe Yoga is one that's really done a great job with this, is essentially you can upload an image of yourself or an avatar, and then you can look at certain shirts or pants or hats, and you can visualize how they'll look on yourself or on an avatar before you buy. And a lot of brands are looking to have this capability on their online stores, but it also helps for elevating experiences when you go to a physical location. Having the ability, it's kind of think of it as an alternative to a fitting room where you're actually physically putting on the clothes. But with a technology like this, you can look at 10 different colors probably within like 30 to 45 seconds versus having to retry on all your clothes that you have in a fitting area. So there's a lot of innovations being done on that front. And it kind of gets back to my earlier point when you think about all of the expenses and the costs involved with being profitable with a physical location. Having these elevated experiences helps to create more demand and help to obviously honestly generate more sales to justify all of those costs involved with the physical location. So
Awesome, awesome. I completely see it. Indeed. Do you believe? Do you consider that it is important for these retail companies now to reach out tech companies and find free partnerships? Because some of these advances in especially AR, for example, are they still expensive for
yeah,
retail?
yeah, they are expensive and pricey. I think I doubt, well, I doubt that retailers can establish free partnerships unless it's maybe an up and coming technology that's trying to make a name for ourselves. I'm
Okay.
sure there's been some scenarios where in exchange for it basically in exchange for having free access to the technology, the new technology company just gets pure brand awareness from partnering with a big brand like Alo Yoga or Nike.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen though as an alternative is free trial periods. So a lot of times the technology companies will allow, especially if it's a big brand, they'll allow them the ability to do a test run, so to speak, where they'll give them free access for maybe 30 to 45 days and see how it resonates with their customers. And then if there's a mutual benefit and they see some success, then they get into a paged engagement and an agreement from that standpoint. But it honestly, the devil's in the details with how those deals are structured. But similar to a lot of the MarTech and ad tech vendors I've worked with, a lot of times you'll get at least a free trial period or a sample period to prove out the success of a new technology. So
Yeah, completely see it. Indeed, freemium is indeed even more extensive now, even to retail businesses.
yeah.
Phil, how do you see it in the sense of retail? I when I remember my experiences back in the leisure industry, we were always talking about the AAA locations, meaning the premium locations. If we wanted to open a new business, we had to be in the best traffic streets of the city. Uh, do you still think that actually that's really important, or that actually can be now overcome with technology?
Yeah, I think I obviously you want to have the best technology and the best location. That's the best
The
formula,
perfect.
perfect formula for success. But I think to your point, um, yeah, there definitely is a happy medium, and I definitely think the great thing about having a direct to consumer presence and e-commerce is the ability to collect so much data about your consumers. So when you think about it, when you sell to somebody online on your own personal website, you're understanding what they purchased, when, what colors they like, what sizing, maybe what creator. And I think the ability to use that to personalize your outreach and communications with them, I've seen directly that can influence driving demands to physical locations where you can be super personalized and hyper targeted. Even if you're not in an A location, I think when people have such a positive affiliation with a brand, they will travel and go to further locations or maybe non-ideal places. I think two that stand out here in California. I have some family in town. They're from the Midwest, and so food is a big topic of conversation. And so Chick-fil-A is doing a great job with how they've been able to increase their traffic and whatnot. But In-N-Out Burger is one that's really a big one that has huge brand affinity, and people will drive to all types of locations to get In-N-Out burgers, and they've done a great job of just branding themselves as a food category that you have to eat when you're in California. So yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. One of the one of the great moments that we have with this interview is that we are talking about real, not only real but well-known brands and what is happening out there. Because here in Europe we do have also our share of brands, yet it's great to see also the situations what is happening with worldwide brands in the retail industry. I mean, when we talk about Best Buy and beyond, I think that it was only like 20 years, maybe 15 years ago when there was a movie even made with them. I remember the Adam Sandler movie Click, where
Oh,
we're
yeah.
talking about them, and now that they are gone, wow, since changed really quick now with technology. Now, Phil, we this is something interesting that has been changing now in this segment in Growth Hacks Experiences. In one point, our name changed because of one interview. Now we also changed some of the interview questions we used to do. Uh, just to give you a little more feedback about it, we used to ask the question, what do you stop doing? What do you think that people are doing wrong that they should stop doing? And we change it because we just learned from one high performance coach for athletes, for Olympic athletes, that we should never ask people to stop something. According to him, he said that uh, it's not about stopping or starting, it's about what did you learn from your failures.
Mhm.
So that was very interesting to learn from him. And so we reformed our question, we reformulated our question, and now we ask that, Phil, if would you be will be kind to teach us a little bit about some major struggle that you found in e-commerce or in your industry, and what kind of lesson did you get from that struggle?
Yeah. So I think that's a great example that you teed up because I've had a lot of experiences running paid media in particular for brands that were on a growth trajectory. And I think to what you asked, it's funny, a lot of times I would go into leadership meetings with, the leadership of the brands I was working with. And a lot of times the meetings where we overperformed were a lot more difficult than the meetings when we underperformed. And I think one thing a lot of brands I see that make mistakes is when they're starting out. And so a big thing with media and digital is figuring out the right investment mix to create brand awareness and to generate sales. And so what I see with a lot of brands is they'll be too quick to judge the performance of a channel or a mix of channels if they see that costs to acquire new customers aren't aligning with average order values. They aren't thinking about the other phases of a purchase process. A lot of times, people have to become aware of your product. There's a consideration stage where they're researching other players. And then a third stage that I speak to a lot is actually being convinced to buy your product. And so I'm working in the beverage space right now. This shirt is actually from a brand that I'm running e-commerce for called Moon MXXN, and I've talked to other players in this space, and I've heard statements like paid social doesn't work for driving beverage sales, and I just don't I just reject that type of statement because it can definitely work. It's just how what creatives do you have in the mix? What pricing are you presenting in front of consumers? Are you presenting? There's so many factors where I don't think you ever, to your point, I don't think you ever fail when you're running media and marketing. It's what are you doing with your learnings, either on the positive end or more importantly, when you don't see the right results, what can you tweak and what can you augment to have better optimization and efficiencies in the future. So I think, I get it a lot of times, especially with smaller to medium-sized companies, when you're trying to be on these quick growth trajectories and you're trying to present a good story for investors, you want to make really quick decisions and make quick calls. But honestly, you got to have patience. It's a combination of having patience, but then also always having backup ideas and future tests that you want to bring into the mix to get incremental further learnings for the future. So I would say that's the biggest thing I've seen some where I see fallacies with especially small to emerging brands is not having patience, but then not thinking through the lens of, what do we need to stop doing, but how can we do it differently to be more effective. So
Exactly. Talking about the learning curve. Excellent. Excellent. Now, here we have a surprise also, Phil. We recently added also something to our segment, to Grow Hacks Experiences, where we normally ask the current special guest a question that the previous guest left for him. So our previous guest, his name was Matt Harris, and he's a founder of a platform that is helping revolutionize the cleaning industry in Europe with growth strategies. And he asked the following question. Uh, he left a question. He didn't know that you will be the next one. It's just always a surprise question. And his question was like, what kind of three skills do you consider that a founder or a leader should have in order to implement growth strategies in their company?
So so number one, that's a great question. What three skills should a founder or leader have?
Yeah.
I think number one, a clear the ability to develop a clear mission statement and stance for the brand that they're trying to grow. I think number one, even before you get into media, analytics, tech, like having a clear vision of what you want your brand to stand for. And I think alongside with that, I would say a passion. To be an effective founder leader, you gotta have passion, and your people that you bring into your team have to be able to see the passion. Number two, I would say definitely analytics, being comfortable with numbers, being comfortable with putting together forecasts, understanding what drives forecasts, levers you can play with to accelerate growth. And then number three, I would say, is a combination of having patience, but understanding how to build a team, and then probably even more importantly, how to motivate different team members, which is a combination of providing clear direction for what certain team members are on point for or responsible for, but then how to connect with those team members, motivate them, and then show them how what they're working on connects to the larger vision and growth of the brand. So I think, a lot of times when people think about leaders and what makes them great, they think of, somebody that's loud, that is super intelligent, has a high IQ, but I do think it's a mix of passion about your brand, the social skills, the emotional intelligence of connecting with your team members. But then I do think the analytics and understanding the finances is another key trait, because you're likely, number one, you got to understand how your business is performing over time, but then you're likely going to have to pitch to investors at some point, and that's like a requirement, to be able to sit in those rooms. So.
Wow, thank you, Phil. That's exactly very helpful for every business owner, every founder out there. Actually, the importance of having these three balances inside of a company. Yeah. What kind of question would you like to leave, Phil, to the next guest?
Yeah, I think and me and you were talking about this before the call. So AI, artificial intelligence is the hot topic right now. I have my own opinions about use cases in marketing, operations, customer service, but I'd love to hear from the next guest. Like what specific use case or use cases have him or her seen that AI is really having an impact with media and marketing? I'm curious to understand, is it copywriting? Is it imagery? Is it video production? I'm just curious if there's any specific use cases. It doesn't even have to be media and marketing. It could be anything when you think about the entire operation of running a company. I'm just really, really curious what him or her would say. So.
Wonderful. Phil, thank you very much. This has been a fantastic moment of learning. I consider that not only we address the fact of the changes in the market in the retail sector and e-commerce, but we also address the fact that companies, they need to keep learning. Companies, they need to keep adapting themselves, especially now that we have new technologies coming, where it's not anymore about let's say the tech industry behind it, but also about how the user is implementing them, and that how the user is going to affect the decision of the user is going to affect the businesses worldwide. Phil, wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Phil, from our network, from our communities, business coaches, founders, entrepreneurs, and startups owners here in Europe, if they would like to get in touch with you to go deeper into e-commerce strategies and in the retail industry, of course, how they can boost their business now, how could they reach you, please?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Phil Irvine. And I believe if you Google search me, I should be the one person or the main person that pops up. And then my email address also is Phil, PHIL at Mojo, MOJOPSG.com. So yes, please feel free to email me, connect with myself on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'll love to chat with anybody in your audience if they just want to bounce some ideas off of me. And like I mentioned, Mojo, we proactively go out and are looking to partner with brands to help them on their growth journeys as well too. So we'd love to engage with anybody that's interested along those lines also. So
wonderful, wonderful, Phil. Thank you. We're going to make sure that we have all information from your profiles as well as your companies in our descriptions, not only for our channels but also in all of our distribution moments in social media and in our websites as well. Phil, wonderful. Thank you very much, sir. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Definitely. And again, I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully the content is valuable for your audience. So yeah.
Let me take the opportunity to introduce you to my daughter that she decided to jump in and share the love. Phil, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
And I hope she enjoyed it too.
Yeah, she did.